Well, what a day we've had. Thank you to all the case competition participants and congratulations to all the finalists. We'll let you know after the panel who the top 3 teams are from the case competition. So today, I am joining this virtual event representing the University of Calgary, which is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Mokitstin, which we now call the city of Calgary. We have many attendees from Canada and beyond, so please share with us where you're joining us from in the chat. And since we have many territories represented in our panel and audience, please share those with us in the chat as well as I continue forward with the introductions of who I am. So my name is Noor Bader. I'm a 5th year business analytics student at the University of Calgary. I'm also pursuing a minor in psychology as well. I'm finishing my last term in the ECoOp program this coming December with Synovus Energy, and I'm currently the co-president of Enactus here at the U of C. So Enactus, in case for any of you who do not know what it is a social nonprofit that focuses on leveraging one's business skills to give back to the community. So that's why I'm so happy to hear from all these panelists. My time at Haskayne has really fueled my passion for being a part of initiatives that serve the community and support the development of individuals. This is why I'm really excited. So, woo! Okay, so before introducing you to all the panelists, I would like to share some reminders. This session is meant to be interactive, so please use the chat to share thoughts and comments and the Q&A feature to submit questions to the panel. It can also be upvoted by other members in the audience to have your question kind of raised a bit higher. Please use hashtag POP2021, so hashtag POP2021 on social media if you're sharing snippets of the POP Summit, because we'd love to see it as well. This session is simultaneously being translated in French for our audience members that may wish to choose that option as well. And today's panel, now we'll get into that, consists of student social entrepreneurs with diverse stories. Please welcome Eden Fulgo, co-founder and CEO of Mobot based in New York. Please welcome Paul Shumlik, founder and CEO of Deepwater Farms based in Alberta, Hydro House based in Ontario, and Emily Bland, founder and CEO of Succeed based in Newfoundland. Now I will turn over the mic to Alexandra Daigneault from the NU board and the Trico Charitable Foundation, who will be moderating this panel.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Alexandra Daigneault. I am the founder of Sarjasa, and I'm also the liaison for student social entrepreneurs at the Trico Foundation. We are so excited to have you today. This is one of the events that I was most looking forward to because when do we ever get a group of student social entrepreneurs, some who have left post-secondary and are now pursuing their ventures full-time, as well as current student social entrepreneurs in conversation together about the things that they have faced, opportunities and challenges in their businesses. This panel is structured a little bit differently than other panels because we really see a lot of magic happen when social entrepreneurs are put into conversation together. So I'm going to lead off with a couple of questions for each of the panelists, and then we're really going to encourage the panelists to ask questions of each other as well as taking questions from the audience. So please feel free to ask anything that's on your mind. This is a great opportunity if you are a student social entrepreneur to learn from those who have walked the path. As well, if you are a student thinking about joining a social purpose startup, this is a great way to learn what things you can do in support of the social impact of the organization that you're working with. So to lead off, I guess I'll just start with a question for Eden. We first encountered your work with the foundation when you were working with Sunsaluter. And we were so excited to talk to you because you have since left Sunsaluter and you've now co-founded Mobot. And I was really wondering, when did you know that you needed to exit the company, and what steps did you take once you knew to prepare?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alexandra, and thanks for everyone for organizing this conference. It's so exciting to be here. So yeah, context for everyone is my name is Eden. I'm originally born and raised in Calgary. Started Sun Saluter, a nonprofit, and then worked for a few years in technology in New York City, and then eventually started my own company, a for-profit company called Mobot, and we're a tech startup that's based in New York. And I think for me, starting my nonprofit, I started it like in high school. It was sort of like a project that snowballed where I turned a science fair project into a renewable energy internship. And then when I did that for a few years, I realized, oh, actually, this project that I was developing at school could actually be used in the field. And so I founded a nonprofit to essentially deploy a solar panel rotating technology in the developing world in different countries. And so it ended up being, a lot of educational workshops, a lot of programming, a lot of travel. And my roots were, I was studying engineering. I really like building products. And the more and more that I was running Sun Saluter, the more I realized I was kind of getting away from my core skill set of actually building hardware, working with engineers, and being an engineer myself. And so that was ultimately what inspired me to kind of change gears in my career a little bit. And definitely, I'm happy to talk more about what it's like to make a transition when everyone knows you as one thing and now you're this other thing. And so we can get into that later, but that's a little background on myself. And I think ultimately, I was very driven by, kind of the social impact of building Sun Saluter at the beginning. But I realized that there is also value, especially in your 20s, to developing skill sets, working at different organizations, working in a large company, working on a startup. And so that was what inspired me to kind of change gears. Was I didn't want to get pigeonholed into just doing one thing.
That's awesome and so valuable. When you knew, what sort of steps did you take? And I would also love to hear more about the transition piece.
Yeah, so what we do at Sun Saluter is a lot of the content is now freely available online. It's open source. We created, before we wound down the organization, we spent a lot of time creating content that anyone could access that would be timeless. And a lot of that knowledge didn't exist, when we were still operating day to day. And I had a team of folks in India that were sort of building new versions of our solar tracker and deploying it in the field. A lot of that work was very local. And we realized, just because we were winding down as a nonprofit organization doesn't mean that, that work has to be gone, right? So we spent a lot of time being thoughtful about documenting the work that we did, making sure that all the content was gathered and then turning it into an open source guide that is actually available online at sunsaluter.org. And anyone can access a how-to guide and an instructional tutorial video about how to actually build their own solar panel tracker. And part of the reason why Sun Saluter became less relevant over time was when I originally started my nonprofit 10 years ago, solar panels were really expensive, prohibitively expensive in a lot of different places. And as the markets evolved, renewable energy became more accessible to more communities. So having this sort of supplementary technology to make solar panels more efficient was no longer as useful. And I think that's an important learning as an entrepreneur, is to kind of make sure that you evolve your career and your company and your organization with the technology trends that are happening in society. And sometimes it does mean that your thing might not be useful anymore. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I think it's good to be thoughtful about and strategic about how you choose to approach that that transition. And you can move on to something new.
Wow, that's so thoughtful. And thank you so much for sharing kind of the full arc of that story. I really appreciate it. The next question that I have is for Paul. Paul, from the outside looking in, it seems like Deepwater Farms is mostly focused on wholesale. I'm wondering how you decided to pursue that as a model versus direct to consumer.
Yeah. So for like wholesale, I guess if you're looking at that as, direct to like B2B, for us, we started because we just wanted to know like who was growing the food, how's it being grown, and how we could get involved in that. And so by asking those questions, we had to figure out exactly who our customers were going to be. And so at the early stages, like one of the aha moments I had was when I was asked by our professor, Ray DePaul. He asked me, who is your customer? And I said, everyone's going to be our customer. But quickly I realized that, we had to figure out logistically what that would look like. And so we needed somebody who was going to buy just the right amount and pay a good price at those early stages. And that happened to be chefs and restaurants, because when we just started out, it wasn't like we were growing large volumes. We were growing, a couple pounds a week out of even just like a backyard garden in the summer, just to kind of test assumptions and hypotheses about who our customers would be. So we needed a product. Chefs would buy just the right amount. And so that's how we started with chefs, was because, we could work with them, we can communicate, get feedback, and then they would tell us, we don't really like this product, but if you grew kale or arugula, like we'd buy that, and we go through a lot of that. And so through that learning, we just built our customers and I started to understand that. And so for the longest time, our customers were just restaurants, and then we would sell to distributors because with a product like ours being baby greens, it's a perishable, so it has to stay refrigerated. So we kept going down that, and then eventually that led into retail, where we could, start selling to Calgary Co-op, Safeway, and Sobeys. And that was a pivot because of COVID, because restaurants shut down, and then that actually opened the door to restaurants, and so, or to retail and grocery stores. So that it's been that, and that's been our customers, because I would say of cold chain logistics. But now with this last mile fulfillment, we're really actually looking at kind of like, how do we go directly to customers, and can they buy online, because that's such a great opportunity for businesses to be able to sell online. And so with like Skip the Dishes or DoorDash, we're trying to figure out a way, that's feasible for us to use last mile delivery, so we can go be like direct to customers. And that's kind of been like, I guess, a discovery process.
Awesome. So when you're designing tests for these sorts of things, what sort of steps do you consider?
Well, I go back to like to when we found our customers and our product market fit. It's all interviews and just assumption testing. Like it's, the lingo of startups, I guess, and testing your hypothesis. And so the best way to do that is just through direct conversations with who you think your users or customers are. And they'll tell you exactly what you need to hear. It's not always what you want to hear or what you think is right or wrong. But at the end of the day, what they say is the most important. And so the tests are just basically done through direct interviews with our customers. And that's really like where the bulk of our work has been done is that. And then it also just builds brand loyalty and a tremendous relationship, because then those customers are loyal to you and you're loyal to them, and you build a business that lasts because you deeply understand each other.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Lucas and Peter, I have a question for you. As co-founders, I think that there's often really intense relationships that go along with co-founding a business. And I'm wondering what strategies you two are using to work together in a way that is like generative and collaborative.
So a bit of context about where our relationship as co-founders started. I think it's pretty standard for student entrepreneurs, but we were friends and classmates. We knew each other before we started to collaborate together on Hydro House. And so we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. We were pretty familiar with what each other was capable of, but it's certainly a different dynamic working as co-founders. One thing that we had, like one realization that we had right away, is that it's not like working on a school project or something together. It's all like starting a business is a lot of commitment all the time. So you need to just trust each other and trust that the other person can accomplish what they say they're going to accomplish. I think that's one important realization that we had right away. So.
Yeah, certainly. And it's just knowing that, you know, we're not going to be able to always, you know, go do the same things at the same time. We've got to be able to take the workload and split it between us, and take the things that each of us are good at and recognize what those things are, and split up workload effectively, so that we can, you know, there's two of us, we can get twice as much work done if we're, you know, effectively dividing and conquering on a lot of things. And that's been really beneficial as co-founders to be able to do that.
Yeah. And part of developing this new dynamic as co-founders is that I think you start to think that when you are hanging out together, spending time together, you're almost like obligated to work on the business together. So you can lose track of being friends or relaxing or something. And so like, it's actually important to schedule or like make an effort to still be friends, like not just work all the time, you burn yourself out.
Wow, that's like a really interesting kind of take on that. I hadn't thought about it that way. Just to give the audience some clarification, you two are both still students. You were the recipient of the new national award 2 days ago. And so I have some questions. As students, are you finding it difficult to balance the workload of being an entrepreneur and school, as well as potentially working part-time?
Yeah, certainly. It's an interesting kind of space to be in. They're starting a business and continuing with school at the same time. But I think we're pretty spoiled here at the University of Waterloo. We have quite a innovative atmosphere and a lot of people that are around to support entrepreneurs and support people as they start businesses. Like there's quite an entrepreneurial buzz around here. So it's that part of it's really beneficial. But yeah, of course it's challenging to keep on top of schoolwork and dedicate enough time and resources to starting a business as well.
Yeah, you started, Alexandra, by saying that these are some people in startups that have walked the path, but I feel like the whole path is still ahead of us. We're just starting. The one thing with starting a business in school is that you got to let go of being a perfectionist. You just don't have time to do 100% in school and also commit a big proportion of your time to the business as well.
Yeah, I think one of the social enterprise finalists said that you can do everything you want, but you can't do it all at once. So I'm hearing echoes of that in your answer. Yeah. Emily, do you want to join the stage? I have a question for you too.
Sure.
I am so excited to meet you. Thank you for being here. I have been thinking a lot about hydroponics, aquaponics, and kind of the surge we've seen in home systems because of the pandemic. I'm wondering how you handled that and copycats, like lower cost copycats produced elsewhere in the world with your business over the past 2 years.
100%. So for us, we've been heavily focused in the educational space and working with youth to improve their knowledge around sustainable agriculture, health eating, waste reduction. So right now we're working with about 20,000 students across Canada, and we have gardens in about 2,500 homes across Canada as well. COVID was a surge for us at the start of gardening being a new trend and people getting excited about it. Like many companies, we went through the challenges of trying to redo our supply chain and figure out how to get things in and deal with a lot of the shipping challenges that were happening. But it's created this incredible synergy here in Newfoundland and Labrador of people being highly concerned about where your food is coming from, the process that goes into getting it there. In our province, for an average 3-course meal, the ingredients will travel more than 50,000 kilometers, which is the distance around the world.
So we're now tied in to do a mass hydroponic project at the size of 5 hectares, so about 125 NBA basketball courts. So it's been challenging, but it's been, I think, a blessing in disguise with COVID that people are truly concerned about the food they're putting into their body and where it comes from.
Amazing. And that leads into the next question that I had, which is about your supply chain. Victoria Ross, one of our recipients for the What's Next YYC Award yesterday, was talking about the importance of local manufacturing, local growing, and all of those components. And it got me wondering about where your materials are coming from and how you decided where to source.
Yeah, so we are 99% Canadian sourced. So everything except one small widget that we cannot find a Canadian company to produce for us is all locally produced. Our nutrients come from a local company in Quebec who make custom nutrients for our Succeed gardens. And then for us, it was really about having kind of more control about our production and fulfillment process. So all of our gardens are hand built by youth experiencing homelessness from here in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. So for us, ensuring the quality of the products and the pieces that go into our gardens was incredibly important. It wasn't hard. It was quite hard to source a lot of our products locally, but we found that once we were kind of into more active selling phases, we worked with a lot of gardening and local companies that wanted to scale with us as well. So creating those partnerships early and having supporters, suppliers, production partners that can scale with you is very, very important.
Wow, that is such an incredible feat. Congratulations. Now I thought we could open it up. If you have questions for each other, maybe just popcorn across the screen.
Sure, I'll start. So you guys have all graduated from university and successfully taken your venture out of the university ecosystem. Does anyone have any tips on what the most important first step is when you leave university?
Happy to hop in. So our Succeed was actually founded through Enactus. So it was a volunteer group of about 30 of us at the time that were running Succeed. I was getting ready to graduate. I had my job contract signed with Ernst & Young. Thought I had my whole life figured out. But had that little voice in the back of my head that was like, you can't leave Succeed. What's going to happen to it? Like, what are you going to do? So I ended up calling my manager and quitting my job before I started, and then going to the Enactus team and saying, guys, like, I love this. This is what I'm supposed to do. Can I try and make that transition? My biggest piece of advice around it would be jump right in, do it. There is no better time in your life than when transitioning out of university to start something in the entrepreneurial space. People who've blazed the path before you, they love seeing young energy and young talent get into the space, and they're willing to help and support and to come on that journey with you. And I think that's a very special thing. One thing I think a lot of people don't talk about is day one of being an entrepreneur. No one tells you what to do. There's no manual that says, here's how you start a company, and this is the steps that you're supposed to take. So if you take that journey, understand that the chaos and not always knowing what to do is normal, and embrace it.
I can also jump in to share my perspective, which is, I started my first nonprofit while I was a high school student, and then as a college student, and then I dropped out of college to run that nonprofit for a couple of years. And I think when you're an early founder and you have no work experience, and I guess I didn't university, so at that point, like, I just had a couple semesters of classes. There was a lot I genuinely didn't know, and so I think I made a lot of mistakes around hiring and firing people and building a team, and even just like figuring out the right strategy for the nonprofit. And I think a lot of that was tremendously helpful the second time around when I started my current venture. But I think after winding things down with Sun Saluter, I did actually take like 2 years, and I worked at other people's companies, and it was tremendously valuable for me. So I feel like it's amazing if you have an idea, like go for it, start your company today, but it's also okay if it turns out that idea wasn't a great one and you're going to start a better one later. And sometimes going and getting those building career capital, building skills, and then starting your next venture later on. I started Mobot, later in my 20s, and I feel like I was much more grounded. I had a lot more perspective. And ultimately, what we build is we build mechanical robots that automate software testing for mobile apps. And I wouldn't have thought of this idea if I hadn't been working, in between my two ventures. And so I think there's a lot of value to, if you aren't sure what to do, even though it feels like everyone else knows what to do, sometimes it's okay to take a job. But if you have like something you can't stop thinking about, like Emily did, like you should probably follow that gut instinct. It can probably take you somewhere pretty special.
Awesome. Do you have any thoughts on this, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of people are saying, just go for it, and absolutely, you got to just go for it. And I think it's not always about like your idea or the business, but yeah, it's kind of about you and your ability to overcome adversity, and it's a lot of persistence. I think if you ever feel like quitting and moving on to something else, it's like, well, I'll probably feel that same thing there. So I should just grind it out and keep going. So yeah, it's also a balance of am I being stubborn, or is this what it takes? And yeah, I think the more time and effort you can put into it, the better, and not have distractions, and just keep your head down and go. So.
Awesome. Are there any other questions between the panelists?
I'd love to hear if any of you guys have had experiences where people have judged you for having the title of CEO or executive director, but being so young, and any tips to share around there?
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to say, I've never had any problems with it. You got to do it. You got to take the responsibility and the ownership, is my take on it. And yeah, I think people admire young people taking risks and going for it.
I think for me, I'm a solo founder. I started my company by myself. So day one, it was like there was no one else. And I think when you're the CEO and founder of one, like no one cares, it's fine. But I think I've realized to kind of just start to build for others to build context around, okay, we're not like some rinky-dink startup, right? There's like actual people, real customers, real revenue. I often try to kind of at least talk about the accomplishments of the rest of the team, because then inherently when you do that, you're telling everyone, you're signaling that, hey, you have a real team. You're not the CEO of like your own project. Because I think, and it sounds like, Succeed is way beyond that stage. And so I think like I've definitely kind of experienced in the early days where people don't really know, like, is your thing real? Is this just some cute little venture you started in college? And no, it's a real company. You have real revenue, real customers. Talk about those accomplishments and kind of own that. And I think, I used to kind of struggle with, I should be modest. It sounds like I'm bragging. But no, I just go for it now. Like people are usually excited to hear some of the stories, and especially like as a founder and CEO, you've gone through so much and you can tell all these interesting stories about the company. And I think those stories inherently kind of, demonstrate the wealth of knowledge that you've accumulated. And that can be very helpful. But yeah, I've been through the same thing where you tell people you're a CEO and they're just like, that's cute. That's nice.
That is awesome. I love to hear these stories. And I think that it's just so valuable for people to see, like, especially young women in roles of leadership and like representing as CEOs, because it gives also people something to look up to as well, and like role model. So we have some questions in the Q&A. The first one is, have you ever faced challenges because others had the perception that business and being socially good doesn't mix? If so, how did you overcome those challenges? And I invite anyone to answer.
I'm happy to hop in. We've had it since day one. We're considered a tech company, but being considered a social tech company isn't something I think that's common, or at least wasn't 5 years ago when we first started out. We were raising our first round of financing in Creative Destruction Lab, so a tech incubator out of Toronto. And it had never been more clear to me that there's a very large percentage of the investment population right now that doesn't get why social impact is important and doesn't understand why there's so much effort, time, and support being put into making things more environmentally friendly or socially responsible. I had a well-known investor look at me, and in front of about 600 people, 100 of which were investors, and straight up say that I was living in la la land, that the only way to make change in the world is to get filthy rich, and then you can pay other people to do it for you. And I stood up in front of them and listed about a dozen reasons why that is not true, and how you can do both, and that if he expected to be continuing on with doing like consumer packaged goods or direct to consumer products, that there's a whole generation of people that care about what goes into their products. They care about how they're made. And if he doesn't get with the times, he's going to be on the other end of these presentations in a couple of years.
Yeah, really quick for me, I guess, like at the beginning, obviously wanted to like save the world, or that's kind of why I got into it, was just concerns out of climate change and food security and whatnot. But it was hard to kind of at the beginning, like understand that it's hard to save the world on day one, and you can't be afraid to make some money, because you do need to make some money to save the world. And I think that was like a good learning experience for me, was to understand that like a good social venture or that type of enterprise model should have strong cash flow, or it can, and it's not bad to do that. And even if your social initiatives aren't amazing on day one, that's totally fine. You have to get going, and then you can always circle back around and improve the way you're doing things. So I think that was a good one for us to kind of get over that fear initially.
I think like for me in the early days, I was sort of almost, I feel like Sansaliter and building this nonprofit I was kind of a victim of the hype around social enterprise at the time. And this was like 10 years ago. So I think there's been a more nuanced kind of evolution of the industry since then. But I basically, with not really having to try that hard, I wrote a lot of applications. There was a lot of grant writing involved. I was able to put together, like $250,000, $300,000 in grant money to start my venture. And because, those grants were so focused on just like social impact, and I was just focused on getting this tech idea out there, I feel like it sort of insulated me from the reality of actually thinking about, was my venture going to be something that was sustainable, away from grant funding and, self-sustaining. And I think it kind of delayed the inevitable for me for, a couple of years. And so that's why I actually think it's better to have your business stand alone as a venture, take the word social out of it. I think you as a founder need to have that in your mission and as a part of your core values for the company. But I've always felt like if you focus too much on the social part at the beginning and then think of the business part as secondary, you end up in the trap where, you realize it's not sustainable and then you have to shut it down, which is kind of what happened. Is I had this tech idea, I thought we could sell it. And then it turns out when we couldn't sell it, let's turn into a nonprofit and run it for a few years. And it was very rewarding work, but I knew sort of in the back of my mind that it wasn't going to scale that well. And ultimately, when I started, Mobot, which is a venture-backed technology company, I realized like let's focus on actually building something of value to our customers. And we'll, doing good and building a good company and having good company culture are all important things. The kinds of customers, the kinds of people we choose to do business with, you can manifest your social values in different ways without explicitly being an energy company in Kenya or something, right? So I think we've shifted in the last 10 years. Like when I was a student, like every social venture was super obvious it was a social venture. It was like international or clean water or something. And I think nowadays, I think that has evolved a lot to be just more pragmatic. And I think that's really healthy. But I think that's something to keep in mind is just, be a business first and be a founder that really has those values that will permeate throughout your organization. And I think it will become a social venture inherently.
I have two really quick points to kind of build on that. Firstly, like a business, it's going to take a lot more. You're always going to need twice as much money, and I think that's why it's really important to kind of have a standalone business, because sometimes that social part, like it can take money and add expenses, and at the beginning stages, like you have to run super lean, and I think it's really important to emphasize that. But secondly, having those social initiatives baked into your why and like your kind of like your ventures ethos is really positive, because like we've gotten so much money from grants because it's like, well, we have this idea that can have this impact, and that also builds that brand loyalty and get people to buy in, and not just consumers but funders and people who do give you money for grants, because they believe in that mission. And so having it baked into your mission is fine, and understanding where you want to go and how you're going to get there, but you do have to kind of have a sustainable business model, and it takes like I said, you're going to need twice as much as what you think you're going to need.
Yeah, I would just say one thing as well is I think a lot of the criticism for socially minded ventures comes up because people try to fit a social context to a problem that's not really addressing a real social issue. And if the core fundamental part of your business is addressing an essential social issue, people are never going to criticize you for doing that. And that comes to just integrating it into your business at an essential level. So.
Yeah, this is a really good question. I love listening to what you all kind of build off of each other, because it's such a deep and rich answer for people. One of the questions in the chat is, I guess, Eden, you had mentioned dropping out of university to pursue SunSaluter. And the question in the chat or in the Q&A is about how can post-secondary institutions better support student social entrepreneurs? I would love to hear all your thoughts from everybody on this.
I think it's probably come a long way since, right? I think I've sort of seen in the last 10 years, there's incubators, there's startup classes, but I think like 10 years ago when I was a university student, the whole idea of like, I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg quitting college to start Facebook, that was still like a relatively novel concept at the time. Like, and I think it's something I think that seemed like the only option. And I think universities have evolved so much since. And ultimately the reason why I dropped out of college at the time was mostly just time and bandwidth. Like my organization was taking up so much of my time that I was quite frankly not paying attention in class, skipping too much class. And I think the healthy thing for me to do was like take a leave of absence and actually focus on one thing at a time. And it just kind of so happened that the progression of my career took me in a direction where I was too busy to go back to college, and I kind of realized I didn't need it. And I think that's a decision that's very personal and very different for everyone. But I didn't piece out of college and like plan to never come back. It was intentionally a break. And then the break just got longer and longer. And then at some point I realized if I went back to college now, I'd just be this like, late 20-something person, and I would feel kind of weird, and I wasn't sure. And it also just kind of seemed random. And so, yeah, that's ultimately kind of what inspired me to, make the leap. Was I just thought I was taking a small break. This nonprofit is taking up a lot of my time. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I needed to spend more time building the organization, hiring, traveling, and that just did not work with a post-secondary schedule. But I think it's very different for each person. And so I do think that nowadays programming has gotten a lot better. You can probably like not take a class and get full course credit for doing a venture. And I think it's very different nowadays. And I hope it continues to get better. And I hope professors and students continue to be more understanding of just how hard it can be to juggle both. But I've definitely seen people juggle both. And I think the Hydro House team is an example of that. So it's very possible.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Yeah, there's something we have here at University of Waterloo that they just added in recently called the ECoOp Program. So like our engineering and a lot of our other programs have a mandatory co-op section. So you have to take so many co-op terms as part of your education. And they added in the ability to run your startup and get co-op credit for it. So rather than working for somebody else, you can work for yourself. You get mentorship from people in the community and people at the school. So you can start your business without having to feel like you're giving up an opportunity to get a co-op credit somewhere else. And I think that's super valuable for just creating that innovative atmosphere at school and giving people kind of an easier path to transition into entrepreneurship. And I think maybe we'll see that popping up at other universities as well.
Yeah, just building on what Eden said from the perspective of somebody that's currently in university. Yeah, you can certainly, there are courses and ways to integrate your business and startup kind of efforts into your curriculum, your university curriculum. Luke and I are both enrolled in a class that's called the Fundamentals of Business Creation, and part of that class is applying to some pitch competitions. Not this one, but that's like bonus because we get credits for developing our business. But I guess at the end of the day, if you want an undergraduate degree or a degree in entrepreneurship, you still got to drop out. Like they're not going to give you a degree for being an entrepreneur alone. So
yeah, for me, I did what I call a victory lap in university. The idea came like for Deepwater Farms came in like my fourth year of like 5.5 or something. And fortunately enough for us, I was at Mount Royal University and we had a great Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And that basically nurtured the idea. And I was able to gear a lot of my coursework in those last like kind of 1.5 years towards building this venture. And I was getting credits to go talk to customers and build prototypes and just kind of move the idea along. And so I think without that, like I would never be where I am today. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity in university. And it allowed us to, be involved in pitch competitions. And that was really one of the reasons I kind of did another, like a victory lap, was because we were able to move the idea along. And in that final year, we raised over $100,000 in non-dilutive, non-repayable funds. Just, it was the easiest money I ever got. And I mean that with the most, gratitude for that. But because when you're starting, like that money is so valuable, and it paid for me to basically not have to get a job right away and be able to kind of take that risk first year out of school. So the programming, when I was able to complete my undergrad, was paramount in being able to lead me down this path.
Awesome.
Honestly, I just echo everything everyone said. I think supporting, whether it's with credits, course, it's allowing you to bring some of your projects into your course load, and then financing and funding support around it is huge at that point in the business as well.
I would also say being able to pull the student card gets you into a lot of doors. So you could always like say, hey, I'm a student doing research for a project or a class, and it could be about your business. And it honestly, it opens a lot of doors because people want to help university students.
So true.
That's awesome. One of the things that has been kind of a theme throughout the last 3 days of POP is relationships and the importance of relationships with your customers, with stakeholders, all of that. And Eden had mentioned about just the things you don't learn when you are working for yourself versus working with others in like their own big businesses, small businesses. This is a question that I'll pose to all of you. Have you had any difficult learnings that like within relationships, within partnerships, that you wish you could tell your former selves about to like kind of make the journey easier?
The biggest one that comes to mind for me is don't be afraid of conflict. I think we're taught growing up to avoid conflict like the plague. And I used to hate any type of conflict, whether it was with employees or customers or investors. I was very much the person that was like, okay, whatever you want, like, we'll do it that way. Sure, 100%, like whatever makes you happy. And it's only probably been the past 3 or 4 years that I realized, okay, that's not the way to go about it. Conflict isn't bad. Like conflict helps you reach a better solution in a lot of cases. It helps build relationships. So creating a culture, whether it's with investors, employees, or just people around you, of not avoiding conflict and using it to be productive. There's obviously bad conflict, but embrace it as much as you can and don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, one thing that I think I've learned is, 3 years ago when I started Mobot, like this was my first time actually dealing with real investors, not like grant funders, right? It's very different. These investors served on my board and they continue to serve on my board. And I think for a long time, I felt so pressured to kind of say the things I thought they wanted me to say and then do the things I thought they wanted me to do, but it turned out I didn't even understand what they wanted me to do. And so I was just not myself, but then I was also not effective for them. And I was trying so hard to, be the perfect CEO, be this like boastful, aggressive alpha CEO person that I thought that's what you're supposed to do. But like me, I'm pretty chill. I'm almost like too honest to a fault sometimes, which I think is terrifying when, things are not going well in the business and the investors are like, oh my God, like, why do you not know what you're doing? But I've also realized that it helps for me, that transparency, that vulnerability, that honesty is a big part of who I am and the way I lead. It helps me build trust internally in my team. And then when I tried to conceal that part of my personality with the board and just be this other business person, I think it took me like 2 years, 3 years to genuinely like unlearn this behavior. And even now, I think I'm struggling with it. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome I'm overcoming. But I think the big thing was just, I was trying to fit into this cookie cutter mold of what I thought other entrepreneurs were like. But and it seems kind of obvious in hindsight, but when you're sort of in a pressured environment with like institutional investors, you feel like you have to be and act a certain way. And then I realized recently in the last like 6 to 8 months, like I started my own freaking company for a reason. Like I run the show. Like the investors, I report to the board, but they also report to the board. Like we're all here to make the business better. And if I wanted to run the business this way, obviously it needs to be data driven. I need to know what I'm doing. I have to, run everything by them, but like stop trying to like, filter myself. And because then you just end up with sort of this like second tier version of yourself that just isn't effective at leadership. And so it took me a really, really, really painfully long time to learn that lesson.
Eden, you said that this is like kind of new, that you're still working on it and like learning. What techniques are you using to kind of help you work through that as a challenge?
I think for me, like the biggest stressor is always preparing for board meetings. I think you end up sort of like preparing all these slides, preparing all this content. I used to start planning like weeks in advance, like what is the perfect script, this perfect order of slides and the right things to say. And more recently, I've realized like we have accomplished so much inherently that if I wait until sort of the last week right before the board meeting, it's the most kind of up-to-date news. It is harder to kind of prep the right content, but I think just like not preparing and overthinking so much and just like actually just making sure and I know my business inside and out. I can talk about the facts and figures. I know what our metrics are. Like just don't craft the story as much, but just actually, you know, own what's going on and let them in. And like, if I don't sugarcoat things, and then also just being confident in what we've accomplished. I think, you know, I've realized it's like a sport, right? There's always going to be people who are better than you. There's always portfolio companies that are more successful than yours with better metrics and more revenue and faster year-over-year growth. But like, that doesn't mean that's the only way to be successful as a business. And I think when I stopped feeling bad about who I was and what our business is, I think that was really liberating. And just like, yeah, reading less news about other companies being successful also helped, because then I just was not playing the comparison game so much.
Paul, did I see you nod?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was a great answer, Eden. I think, you know, a lot of the specific issues and learning experience I've had can just be related to communication. And I think like the whole sugarcoating things and crafting a story and a narrative and like using lingo versus just basically saying how it is. But like, I really agree with being confident in like what you've accomplished. But like, I think for me, a big thing in learning is just like in the integrity and saying how things are, and owning that, because like at the end of the day, sugarcoating things, or, you know, it could end up being like misleading or not honest. And then, you know, your word is your word, and it does come back around to you. And I think just saying things how they are and just really owning that, and just kind of, yeah, just being as transparent as you can, and communicating with like your team, like your leaders and your board and those types of things. Like you just got to, you know, like have it all out there. And I think that's, you know, in the past, that's communication to me. And because like communication problems have just led to partnership breakups, you know, losing customers, different things like that. And, you know, just really uncomfortable situations that, you know, lead to sleepless nights and stress. So communication is like really built up on a lot of the, you know, foundational issues we've had.
Recognizing that Lucas and Peter, you're still very early in your journey, but there are probably things that you could refer back to even like earlier this year to tell yourself of like what you've learned. Yeah,
it hasn't, I mean, one of our main partnerships right now is with faculty advisors, industry experts and stuff. And so when you're early on and you're developing your IP, it's always a balance between developing the business and developing the tech as well. I mean, I don't guess that ends, but we have weekly meetings with a faculty advisor who's like overseeing our project at the university. And at first we always felt really like dedicated to delivering a good presentation or like update every single week. And then we realized that the time that we were investing in like sometimes fabricating like an update that didn't really exist because we've been working on a few pitch competitions or something, was just better spent being honest. And sometimes you have to like, yeah, sometimes being transparent, like Paul said, means skipping a meeting, because it's going to catch up to you anyways if they think you're working on something and maybe next week you are talking about the same thing. So it's all right to let something slide with a partner every once in a while, because it just means you can deliver something real the next time. Yeah.
Lucas, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would echo what Peter's saying. It's always, you know, stressful having, you know, you guys are having board meetings, we're having like faculty meetings just because we're, you know, several years behind, but it's, yeah, it's important to just take it definitely use all your resources to the fullest extent, like rather than feeling like we have to deliver a polished presentation every week to these types of advisors. We can more use their resources to our advantage than feel like we have to try and impress them every week or something. So yeah, that's something that we've definitely learned pretty quick.
Yeah, and we've all focused a lot on like business partners, but one thing that I've already recognized and that I'm trying to work on is that there's a whole support network that isn't in your business circle, and it's important to prioritize them as well and not just get so bullheaded of focusing and working on your business. Those people support you when you're working or when you don't have time to take care of yourself.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We have a question in the chat. Do you think it is a disadvantage if co-founders are separated geographically or in different time zones?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's going to be some scheduling challenges that come up with that. It's in the age of the internet and Zoom calls and everything, it certainly made it a lot easier, but just to be aware of when different people can work on different things.
I think it's really dependent on like what you're building and what kind of what's going on in the company and what stage you're at. Like hardware or sales or different things like that. It's all dependent on, I think, really kind of what stage and what you're doing with the business, for sure.
At Mobot, we're a 17-person company, and kind of like what Paul was saying, like our hardware team, everyone's in New York, for obvious reasons. But our sales team, one of our sales team members is in California and one of our sales team members is in Georgia. And so, because of the pandemic, it's actually sort of opened up more opportunities to be able to hire and build a team remotely. So I do think the policy that we've created as a company is that it's more on sort of a team by team basis. So if you work in mechanical engineering, you probably need to all be together, but software engineering, probably more flexible unless you're the one working with the robot. And then, the sales team, like you can sell stuff and call people from wherever you are. And same with customer success. But our operations team, which are the folks that are using the robots every day, we're actually bringing all of those folks back into the office starting in January. And so it's very much on a team by team basis. And I think especially in the early days, kind of like what everyone was saying, like Zoom makes it easy now, but I think you have to be sort of very thoughtful about, some things are definitely just more effective when done in person, but it's not, unrealistic. I've definitely heard stories of fully remote companies and people who've co-founded things who have never met before, and they're doing stuff online. So there are some pretty cool stories out there.
Yeah, every single person on this panel has a hardware component to their startup, so those things are difficult to collaborate on in different time zones.
Yeah, super interesting. There's a comment in the Q&A that's on our conversation earlier about being a CEO, and they're asking if there is potentially a gender divide. So I'm just going to reframe that question a little bit. I'm wondering, Eden and Emily, if you can speak to your experience as female CEOs, and also Lucas, Peter, and Paul, do you notice any times where you feel like you move differently through your spaces as a male CEO versus like any friends or community members you might know who are female CEOs?
I've never called myself a CEO yet, but if I look at the demographic of the class that I was talking about, this the venture creation class that we're in, it's split 50-50, I would say, between women and men working on startups, and collaboration with group members. Gender doesn't really play a role in that class. I don't know if it's because we're a younger generation or something, but it's not that it's not a barrier at all.
Embrace the title. You are CEO. Start owning it. I've noticed, I think with female entrepreneurs, there's more of a hesitation to jump into starting and founding a company than there is from the male perspective. Now, everyone is different. Sorry, my puppy is squeaking a ball. There's differences in all of us. Like, you can point out that Newfoundland on a per capita basis starts the least amount of businesses. You can compare female to male. We're all different, period. What I've seen from a female perspective is there tends to be a bit more of a hesitation to jump into a business, especially when it's tech based or one that would be VC backed eventually. I think it comes from all different reasons. For me, it was self-doubt at first, and like we've mentioned before, imposter syndrome is a very common thing and more common in females versus males as well. But I think it's, no matter who you are, there's going to be hesitations when it comes to entrepreneurship. There is still a big divide. 4% of VC capital in North America goes to female founded companies. that alone points out that there's a problem with the support around it. There's lots of great organizations like CEO who are stepping up and starting to change that divide. I'm rambling, so I'll pass it up to Eden.
Yeah, I think, I don't want to be that person that plays that card, but yes, I do think that like my gender and my ethnicity and just who I am and the hand I've been dealt in life, and we're all dealt a different hand, like that has probably impacted the way that investors perceive me. Probably why I got, rejected by like 50 different investors when I was pitching my startup the first time. And, when we were going out for our larger round of financing more recently, it always impacts, but it's not just in, this is anything, right? It's the way people perceive me as friends, for dating, like all that stuff. And I also kind of related to Emily's statement about, women founders potentially being more hesitant. Like I remember when I first came up with the idea for Mobot, my wife made me like think it over like for 3 months. I was like working at my job and she was like, what are you going to do about your retirement account? Like, do you have 6 months of runway? And like, I was so, she asked all these questions and I was so nervous, but it was actually good in the end because I came up with a really good plan. And I definitely sort of took my time and made sure that this was something I really wanted to work on. But I was very, very nervous. And, but I also think that like all of my life experiences, like I wouldn't change that for anything. And this is the way it is. And I think the important thing is no matter the cards you've been dealt, like even if you feel like you're at a disadvantage, like what's important is that you push through it. You find mentors, advisors, people who have been doing it before, and people who are, especially advisors who are a couple steps ahead of you. And so like when I was raising our seed round for Mobot, having angel investors who were Series A, Series B founders was really helpful, because you don't want like an IPO founder, because they don't remember what it was like to be a seed stage startup. So I think just like finding the right advisors, surrounding yourself with the right people, and kind of like blocking out the haters. We all have haters, right? It doesn't even matter who you are, what gender you are. So I think it's just about, you have to really be the one to believe in yourself. No one is going to believe in this idea for you. Well, sometimes some people might. Like there have been moments where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? And the people around me are my support system, and they kind of remind me why we do this. But I think you kind of have to have that internal clock yourself that kind of keeps going, and that's really important, and that's regardless of gender or race or anything.
Yeah, I can't I won't speak about the VC world, because that's down the road for us, but at least in the university world, like we have a couple weeks ago was Women in Entrepreneurship Week here at Waterloo. I think that was more than just a Waterloo thing, and there's tons of funding and opportunities that are specifically for women startups. I would say there's at least at the university level, the barriers to entry have totally been removed, or there's additional pathways specifically for women, which I guess like there aren't ones that are specifically for men, but they're certainly trying to get more women into entrepreneurship, and to see maybe that's gonna change the field for entrepreneurship, as the next wave of entrepreneurs comes into or I guess out of university.
We have 3 minutes left. Anybody else have any questions for each other? A last one. Okay, there is one more question, or a couple more in the chat, but the first one is, as a student, had you ever heard of social enterprise, and how did this even come up for you? So maybe we'll take two answers on this one.
Yeah, I had heard of it in my university. I took we had a social venture program at Mount Royal, actually, that was introducing it, social innovation or something like that. So it was definitely there, but it was a new concept, and a lot of it was focused around like the human-centered design and not really understanding your users. And I think it just like translated so well to understanding entrepreneurship.
For me, it was through Enactus. So Enactus kind of breathes social enterprise and teaches you to dive right in and understand about your environmental impact, your financial impact, your social impact. So I got involved with Enactus my first day at university. So it became a very normalized term for me pretty young.
Yeah, at Waterloo in the first, I think it was sometime in October, they ran a presentation on triple bottom line, and that was pretty much my first exposure to the whole social enterprise ideology.
Eden, I know that you mentioned that you were one of the first kind of wave of social entrepreneurs 10 years ago. I don't think I had heard of social entrepreneurship until like 6 years ago. So I'd be interested how you first introduced to the term.
Yeah, I think there were a few programs that were starting to kind of pop up. There was this organization called Ashoka, and they had created fellowships for social entrepreneurship, and sort of there was an early wave of sort of social ventures that popped up inspired by some of the Ashoka fellows. And I think that was, when I read a book in high school or my first year of university, how I originally heard of it. So it was definitely sort of a small kind of industry in its infancy at the time, but I think there was still a lot of excitement around it. And I think that's what helped, that environment was what helped me get grant funding in the early days.
Well, thank you all so much for your detailed answers and for taking the time to be here today. I really appreciate the support of students and also the learnings that you shared. I guess I'm just going to pass this off now to Noor, who will introduce the next part.
Thank you, Alexandra. Yeah, so thank you to this panel, such inspiring social enterprises that emerged when these founders were students like me. Such a great impression left, because now we have so much advice and just so much, just really inspiring. I think we're going to take away at least one thing from this entire panel. So thank you all. Now I would like to invite the judges who will be providing feedback for the rest of the participants.
Hi, we are back. So the judges have actually been spending the entire time that this panel has been happening deliberating. When we went into it, we thought we were going to have plenty of time and have a big break. But in fact, we have spent the entire time talking through this. Our top three changed in order, I think 3 different times during that process. But in the end, I think we're to a good place. We're pretty happy about the process and the teams that we've chosen for the top 3. Before we get there, though, we thought we would just each take a moment to talk through and provide a few pieces of feedback to each team. So Cam, would you mind starting us off?
I can do that. So I've got dark red. I think big thing is, I think you got an email just before you were supposed to present, and sort of first out of the box, you came with some game with that part of it. So I think that was really good. It sort of took the challenge of, here, I've got a couple of minutes before I've known I've been made the final, etc. That type of idea. In terms of knowledge, I think one of the big things is I really love the fact, and I think this was brought up by the other panel or judges too, in terms of you went and talked to at least a member in the community. You got to know the community a little bit better. You brought some really good knowledge. You brought some really good knowledge in terms of NNI. And so those pieces, I think, really sort of added to what was there in terms of your solution, and it added to the solution a lot. I think just in terms of an area of improvement is, think about, you're there, you're telling a story, and it's the story of your solution. And I think what happened a little bit is it sort of came out in bits and chunks. So in places there wasn't really good connection from one part of the story to the next part of the story. So I think tying that in together, I think personalizing it a little bit, because you did that. You went out, you talked to people, you had that personal experience in terms of talking with them, bringing that stuff in a little bit more to sort of connect the pieces and really lay it out as a story. And this is something I talk to my case teams all the time is, when we go to competitions, there's a piece on the scorecard that's not officially there, and it's likability. And I think it is about being able to tell that story, sort of flirting with the judges a little bit, telling them this sort of likable story, and sort of building sort of the connections with the judges as you go along that way. So overall, really good job. And I think you brought a lot of knowledge, you brought a lot of good pieces to it. And I think next time, think about just that story a little bit more. Tell us as judges, this is the story of our solution.
I'm going to be talking about Green Gerbil's great presentation. The group was very well prepared. I love the fact that you had appendices slides ready to pull up in addition to your presentation. So that adds that extra look of preparation and professionalism. So that was very well done. Your slides are very clear and easy to follow. And there was an emphasis on getting community involved, engaging them in the process as well. So that was great. And there was time allocated in your implementation for that community focus as well. So the presentation just needed a little bit more clarity on exactly who your target market was, and using the facts presented in the SWOT, which was actually summarized very nicely for the presentation, but just really connecting that to the solution that you were presenting would have gone the extra mile on strengthening the presentation. You were prepared for the questions. The focus on impact reports was great as well. Overall, very, very well done presentation.
Okay, I have Team Alpine. Just a few points. As judges, we really were impressed by the fact that you thought big. You thought big with innovation. So it was, and you took some risks and chances with that. But it was really impressive. Your slides were great. Your presentation was great. You thought outside the box a bit, actually quite a lot, and and that was impressive. You were one of the few that actually brought in the notion of First Nation stewardship and control of the land and what happens to that land. So all those things were positives. Some of the things that for you to think about in the future would be, because you thought so big and because you thought so innovatively, I say that 10 times, it took a viewer or of your presentation a real leap to connect the word of possibility to it. And an idea without good implementation is nothing. So when big ideas come up, they have to be attached with a case for implementation. Otherwise, it's not possible in the minds of a person who's seeing it or hearing it. The other thing that was missing, that was in the case itself, which is, I think pretty much every team had this issue, is the SROI, with social return on investment, wasn't touched on at all. But overall, a great presentation. We enjoyed it.
Okay, I'll be talking about the social changers team presentation. So we thought that it was a really excellent presentation, told a really good story, and really hit the important points that we were sort of looking for in the judging. There was also like also a strong focus on sort of the social enterprise aspect of things, training and employment and community involvement, which is obviously a very important part of what SmartICE does. And it's a really, it was great to see those things were an important part of the presentation. I'd also say that it was there was some good sort of planning around the implementation with a realistic timeline, and that was great to see. The one sort of point that we would like to have seen a bit more clarity on was sort of the partnership aspect of things between C2 and SmartICE and communities, and some more clarity on the technology and some of those details.
All right, fantastic. So that leaves me, and I will be speaking about CORE, the last team that we saw today. And so I think some of the things that really stuck out for us for this team was the incredible passion, strong, engaging presentation, you know, that enthusiasm and that passion really came throughout the entire presentation. I think there was some really good use of, you know, the structure of your analysis was really nice. I really liked your question and answer period. I thought was very well done. You clearly anticipated those questions and had a great division of who was going to speak to each of those two pieces, which I really like. And then also we brought up a couple of times in the deliberation about the STTEM, the STEM, stutter and the STEM piece for teaching that up and coming generation. We thought was a really valuable piece, a really useful thing to incorporate, and really brought in that Indigenous knowledge, that Inuit knowledge, and that traditional ways of knowing, I think was really valuable. I think that it felt that there was maybe a little bit of a disconnect through some of the presentation in terms of bringing it back to the SmartICE specifically, and a little bit the so what, you know, what will this ultimately mean? And then a sort of a detail more than anything, I think, given that these, the Comatech and Buoy have been out in the world in use for a number of years now, I think that will make the patenting piece a challenge, actually, if once it's in the marketplace. You have a limited window before you get to start patenting. But, I think a lot of wonderful pieces throughout today. As mentioned before, it was a really difficult decision, but we are also very, very lucky to have one of the stars of the case. Carol-Ann Harding is here as well today, and she is the CEO of SmartICE, and she got to join us for the second half of the presentation. She was at a different case competition this morning, and so has joined us now, and I was just going to invite her to say a couple of words as well before we get on to that actual finalist announcement. So Carol-Ann, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm really pleased to be able to sit in, and being a bystander or an observer in the judges' room was really, really interesting. Lots of really great comments about everybody. You might hear my dog in the background. Supper time here. So kudos to everybody for taking the time to, really dive into SmartICE and understand, for what the information you had, the limited information that you had about who we are and what we do. And I would invite you all to do some extra work on social enterprise specifically, and what that can bring to the community and to your life and your values, and if that makes sense for you and it resonates with you. And think about social return on the investment, and why social enterprises do what they do. So as you meet new social enterprises in your life, think about that and see where that sits, and does it line up with your values, and really truly to SmartICE's values. We really need to make sure everything we do is in line with that and with our partners, which are Indigenous communities. So thank you for taking that time, and thank you for inviting me to say a few words. Good luck, everybody.
All right, I think that's it from us judges. We'll pass it back over to our moderator.
Patrick, over to you for the big drum roll and announcement.
Hi, yes, hi everyone. I'm just having some issues. I believe the host needs to allow me to put on my, oh, perfect, my video's on. Oh. Great. Hi, everyone. Now, as it's wrapping up, the 3 days have been really amazing, and we've heard so many good things about social entrepreneurship. And, from Trico Charitable Foundation, just the saying of doing well by doing good. We've always wanted to try to create this mindset from not just, entrepreneurs that are in the space already, but the newer generations as well. And that could be of all ages. And to see students now be able to present and find this case study with SmartICE it's such an amazing way that the thinking and the disruption that is being had in all the different industries that we're seeing now is quite astounding, to say the least. So without further ado, I'd like to announce the top 3 winners. I'm starting with number 3. Congratulations to Dark Red. And then top number 2.
Wait, Patrick, can we get yes. Dark Red if you're here? We'd like to take a picture of you, please. If you can turn on your cameras and smile for us. Are you here? Oh, you can't. Okay, wait, our team is working on it. Hold on. Sorry, there's a lot of little things in the background and a big team working hard. So thank you for your patience.
Congratulations, Dark Red, on top 3.
Thank you so much. This has been an awesome event.
Oh, I need to have a professional mic like you, David. That just sounded so nice coming out of the speakers there. Wonderful. Well, congratulations on top 3. Isla, I'm going to go to number 2 now.
Let me just see if my team got a picture. Actually, what we'll do is the top three. If you can stay after I do my closing remarks, we'll take a picture of each team so that we don't take up other people's time. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, Patrick, back to you.
Wonderful. Congratulations to Dark Red. And for number 2, do a little bit of a drum roll. Team Alpine. Congratulations to you guys as well. It was very unique, and to hear from the feedback as well from the judges that you guys were thinking really outside of the box. That's an important note that they've mentioned to me as well. So congratulations on that.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much. It was an honor, and absolutely to be able to bring my team in and let them know about the Indigenous voice and how important that is. I absolutely believe in the Arctic and the Arctic people and the Inuit peoples, and I love the work that SmartICE does. It was a wonderful organization to learn about, and thank you very much.
Congratulations, yeah. Now, last but not least, the winner for the case comp. Another drum roll and a huge roar for them. Social Changers, Consulting. Congratulations, you two. And I think they should be joining on soon.
Wow, thank you so much. This is such a great experience. We're both, this was both of our first case competition ever. So we're really excited about this, and we just love the whole process. Has been amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Meg more. This has been awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And Isla or Nor, I'll pass it back on to you guys. So congratulations again to all the finalists.
Wow, this has been incredible. These last 3 days of learning, collaborating, celebrating. This is amazing. Congratulations to the last to top 3 teams. Loved the representation in I can divulge this now. The top 3 actually did not all have UCalgary students. We had students from across the country participating. And so I'm thrilled that in the top 3, we can have those voices. Thank you for having come on this journey with me to pivot on purpose with us. All of this work has been to promote these kinds of conversations around reimagining business models to solve social problems. And so we want to know if this helped with that and helped you with that. So please let us know. We're putting a little survey in the chat. If you can take a few minutes and please answer that. And no closing remarks are complete without some thank yous. And we have some big thank yous to offer. Firstly, to the Trico Charitable Foundation team, who initiated this journey with us in 2019 by creating the Trico Foundation Social Entrepreneurship Center here at the Haskayne School of Business. And the team behind the scenes, I invite you to come on camera if you're comfortable. I have the events team. They've been making the magic behind all of this work. And without them, we couldn't have done any of this stuff on FeedLoop or any of this planning. So a huge thank you to them. Along with the communications team, the marketing team, the case advisors, the writers, thank you to all of you. And also a great big thank you to all our loved ones and everyone I mentioned, their loved ones, because they have been by our side while we've been creating Pivot on Purpose for you, our audience. And I also finally want to acknowledge the judges, the students, the volunteers, all the speakers, all the MCs, all the moderators, the panelists, and all the winners. Once again, congratulations. Without you, our audience, none of this would have been possible. So thank you to you. And with that, thank you for participating in Pivot on Purpose. And I hope we've helped you to start your pivot and live with a little more purpose. Thank you.